Welcome to the Islamic Library Association. We are dedicated to showcasing Muslims' rich contributions to literature and society while advocating for accurate representation and equity in libraries. Hello and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Khalisah Harris. I am a librarian and founder of the Islamic Library Association. Our mission is to ensure Muslims are equitably and accurately represented with the dignity and depth we deserve in libraries and public spaces. Because libraries shape identity and understanding and often claim to be equitable, we shed light on the gaps where Muslims are missing within the stories and spaces of our own communities. Today, I'm excited to speak with Mumtaz Parker. Mumtaz is a senior leader, MBA candidate, and author passionate about inclusive leadership and meaningful change. She leads major organizational functions in a national organization and speaks about identity, resilience, and belonging as a Muslim woman in the workplace. Assalamu alaikum, Mumtaz. How are you doing today?
Wa alaikum salam, Khalisah. I am well, thank you, and I hope you are too.
I am. Thank you so much for asking. The work that you do is amazing, and I am sure that our viewers, as well as myself, will just love to hear from you and all that you do. So, if you don't mind, let's just go ahead and get started.
Perfect.
So, as a Muslim author, how have you experienced the publishing and marketing world?
Thanks for that question. The publishing world has been a space of both opportunity and constraint, I believe. There's growing interest in Muslim stories, but that interest is often conditional. I found that Muslim authors are sometimes welcomed when our stories fit familiar narratives, which includes topics like struggle, trauma, or explanation, but really less when we write from a place of agency or complexity or quiet confidence. And self-publishing my book was actually a deliberate choice. It allowed me to retain ownership over my voice, my framing, and my audience. It also revealed how much gatekeeping still exists and how powerful it is when Muslim authors build on our own platforms and pathways.
Lovely. Yes. So you made a deliberate intention to self-publish to ensure that you're able to keep your own voice in your work opposed to having to be faced with compromising in order to have
Absolutely.
it. Got it. All right. I'm happy that you said that. Rightfully so. Everyone has to deal with things, but some people
Mhm.
choose to compromise in order to
Mhm.
get their book seen and published and
Mm.
marketed. So to take the other road, it's definitely good to hear that, but unfortunate on the flip side that
Mm.
it's not as much marketing and assistance along the way. You
Mm.
mentioned gatekeeping. Libraries specifically are gateways to knowledge and identity. What role do you believe libraries play when it comes to how they shape Muslim communities and how they see themselves as well as being seen by others?
Mhm. Again, another great question. I think libraries are supposed to be neutral spaces, but unfortunately, they are not. Um, what they choose to include, display, categorize, and recommend actively shapes belonging. So for Muslim communities, libraries can affirm identity by saying, your stories belong here. For non-Muslims, libraries can interpret stereotypes by offering narratives that are human, that are ordinary, and diverse. When Muslims see themselves reflected with dignity and depth, it reinforces their confidence and possibility. And when others encounter those same stories, it builds understanding without actually requiring Muslims to constantly explain or defend themselves.
So,
Mm, mm.
from you specifically, what does accurate and equitable representation of Muslims look like?
I think it means recognizing diversity without ranking it, acknowledging that Muslims are not a single uniform group. We span various cultures, professions, political views, theological perspectives, and life choices. Um, Equitable representation ensures that no one version of a Muslim story is treated as the acceptable or the more legitimate one. At its core, I think it also means portraying Muslims as full human beings, as leaders, as mothers, as sisters, creatives, professionals, people who are joyful, who are flawed, ambitious, and complex, without our faith being framed as something that we need to justify or explain or that needs problem solving.
Beautifully said. Do you feel that certain types of Muslim stories are elevated or allowed more than others? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that stories that focus on oppression are often prioritized because they fit existing frameworks of what a Muslim story is supposed to be. And, stories about ordinary leadership, faith anchored confidence, joy or
Mhm.
quiet resistance are less visible because they challenge dominant assumptions. They don't offer a neat little box or a narrative arc for consumption. But those are often the stories Muslim communities most need and recognize as true.
What about the different ethnic backgrounds? Because I've seen a lot of libraries when it's categorized as Muslim or Islam, it's very Arab based, as if there are not other ethnic backgrounds, other cultures. And often I've even seen culture and Islam, like it equals the same, opposed
Mm,
to representing the diversity within Islam itself, opposed to, like you're saying, there's one type of Muslim. There's with those different cultures, there's different races.
mhm.
Have you noticed that at all, or could you relate to that in any way by what you've seen?
Yeah, I think so. I think it definitely exists, and that's why it's so important that we do have Muslim women, in particular, from different faiths, from different races, and different backgrounds and professions and cultures, and ethnicities, to find their voice, to be able to tell these stories. That's why it is so important, so that there is a diversity of thought, diversity of people who are actually representing and sharing their stories and their voices.
Yes, I agree with that definitely. Also, I've seen many Muslim books. It's as if when they're talking about children's books, it's like a plethora of Ramadan books.
Mm,
But again, it's like the religion is just Ramadan.
mhm,
We have a whole
mhm,
life outside of that one. It is a blessed month, but I think that it minimizes our humanness, of other experiences and decisions that we have and that we make throughout the year, throughout our lives. And when we're talking
mhm,
about that marginalization within a marginalized group of authors and
mm,
literature,
mm.
your book adds to the growing body of Muslim author literature, of Muslim representation. How do you see your book specifically contributing to the broader narrative around Muslim women and authorship?
Mhm. I think my book contributes by refusing apology. Um, it is a book that is centered on a Muslim woman who is ambition. Sorry, I'll just repeat that. It centers a Muslim woman who is ambitious, faith-driven, and professionally grounded, without needing to dilute her identity to be credible. It expands the narrative from survival to self-definition, from visibility to finding my voice. And importantly, it also speaks to women of color more broadly. While it's rooted in my Muslim experience, the themes of bias, resilience, leadership, and belonging resonate across communities.
Exactly. So, for the people who haven't read it, Betting on a Hijabi, can you tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. So Betting on a Hijabi is a memoir style leadership narrative that blends personal experience, so my personal experience, with professional insight. It explores faith, ambition, rejection, resilience, and what it means to lead with integrity while being visibly Muslim.
Mm.
And while the cover reflects my story as a hijabi woman, the book itself is written for a broad audience. It's not about trying to explain Islam. It's about challenging assumptions, navigating bias, and creating space, both internally and within institutions, for people who are often overlooked. And at its core, at its heart, it's a story about authenticity, about leadership and belonging that resonates far beyond one identity.
Would you say that your book is ideal for both Muslim and people who are not Muslim?
Absolutely. And one of the intentional things I have done with the book as well is that at the end of most of the chapters, there's a one pager which is a guide for. For example, if you are a diversity, equity, and inclusion leader, these are the things you should be thinking about. If you are a faith-based reader, this is what you need to be thinking about. If you're a young reader, this is what you need to be thinking about. So the book is for managers, it is for employers, for institutions, to also understand it's not just a Muslim story. It is a story about a woman who happens to be Muslim and a hijabi Muslim who is navigating spaces that have not been built with people who look like me in mind.
If library were to use your book in programs or discussion spaces, what themes do you hope they would explore?
Hmm. Um, I would definitely love libraries to explore themes such as visibility and bias, faith and leadership, belonging, and what that really means. Um, Talking about women's ambition, women's guilt, redefining success beyond that hustle culture, and also support versus saviorism. I think these conversations are not just about Muslims. They are about how institutions hold space for difference.
Again, very well said. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is not a check off to say, oh, we have
Mm,
that one book of this, that one book. Well, that's not equitable.
mm,
Equality and equity is not the same. And when there's books such as yours, self published, but it's still a great book, libraries have created many barriers that would ultimately remove or doesn't even really give your book a chance to be included in the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Like you were saying, the publishing and the marketing we were talking about the compromising, all these things play a role before the book even has a chance to be on a library shelf. So maybe someone would ask themselves, how is a library going to be equitable if they get their resources from inequitable entities, such as the publishing companies, or creating those barriers to say, we're not accepting self-published books. So after a while, it begins to start sounding like a lot of claims with no accountability.
Hmm.
What would you say to any institution, including libraries, that are hesitant to platform Muslim voices out of fear of controversy or discomfort?
Hmm.
What would you say to them?
I would say that discomfort is not harmful. It's the silence that can actually be harmful. And avoiding Muslim voices in order to stay neutral often reinforces existing power imbalances.
Yes.
And true equity actually requires courage, the courage to trust communities, to engage thoughtfully, and the humility to learn. Institutions don't need to have all the answers. They just need to be willing to listen. I think that is the key.
You had a great point. You mentioned silence. The silence can get really loud. To not have representation of the people that are within your own communities, that's being silent, which inevitably lets everyone know, the Muslims and people who are of a different faith, that Muslims are not considered part of their communities. So imagine how that Muslim will function within that community, and also imagine how they're treated within that very same community. And then this is 2026 now.
Mm.
We've gone beyond representation of our own individual communities. Everything's global now. So to me, that's even a more difficult situation to have to defend. Why do you not have Muslim authored literature on Muslim representation? Because you can have a Muslim author who's not writing about Muslims or Islam, and that's okay.
Hmm.
But where are the books where Muslims authentically authored discussing Muslim lifestyles and experiences? It's challenging to me to think about how libraries can defend that.
Hmm. And I think the importance, you make such a valid point there. And I think the important thing as well is also looking at the type of work that you are doing, Khalisah. I mean, I'm based in New Zealand, you are in the US. And, as long as we are having the intention of wanting to support our communities, wanting to support each other, wanting to support other women, um, is that we are then able to create these spaces and platforms where we can share that information, where we can share Muslim authors and the books they're writing, etc., and providing them a platform to be able to do that, as you have now done with me, inviting me to do this session with you.
Well, I definitely appreciate your time and your work. Uh, I say quite often, I am not an author, but as a librarian, I see what's missing, and it's the Muslims. I will also say that the Muslims are not the only gap. in literature within libraries. But we're specifically talking about Muslims.
Mhm,
In your professional work, you deal
mhm,
with governance and strategy. How can any of those principles support equity and representation in spaces that claim to be equitable, such as libraries?
mhm. Again, Khalisah, fantastic question. Um, I, I believe that equity can't depend on goodwill alone. It has to be intentionally built in.
Hmm.
Governance helps us by asking critical questions, such as who holds the decision making power, whose voices are being represented, and where does that accountability sit? Strategy then turns those principles into actions by clarifying what outcomes are being prioritized and how progress will be measured. So when equity is embedded into policies and procurement practices, collection development, and leadership accountability, it moves beyond the symbolism and it actually becomes part of how an institution genuinely operates.
The tokenism is real. The
Mm,
tokenism, the symbolism, it is real. And that's where it comes to, oh, there's one of you. Oh, we have that one Muslim book. And I tell people all the time, when you can count them, that means it's not right. If you
mm,
can, oh, we have that one, we have that 10. Even if someone said we have those 20 books that accurately represent Muslims over there, that's not enough if you can count them because I don't know anyone who knows how many books are representing other groups of people. When you can count it, there's a problem. And that's even included when we're doing author talks. Oh, yeah, we
mm,
had that one author 5 years ago. Yeah. What? One Muslim author 5 years ago?
mm.
No, that
Yeah.
doesn't sound right. And earlier you had mentioned being neutral. The word neutral or neutrality is like a famous word within the library world. It is constantly used. And neutral to me, or the act of being neutral or having neutrality, really just upholds the status quo. It's it's a word that is used to remove any amount of accountability, and it's also used to shift attention off of personal preference within a public place. Libraries, public libraries specifically, are just that, public. They're public. So they use the word neutral to hide behind policies that they have created to establish and maintain the status quo of who is going to be accepted and seen and who's not.
Mhm,
And when we're talking about those policies, that's where the Islamic Library Association comes in. We're not a physical library. We deal with policies because right now there's no standard of what Islamic literature is or what it is not. Because
mhm,
there's a lot of anti-Islamic books and anti-Muslim books categorized as Islam or Muslim
mm,
just because it's mentioned in the book. But that's not a representation of who we are. It's literally anti-Islamic.
mm,
It's
mm,
anti-Muslim. So again, how are you equitable if anti-Islamic books are allowed, but authentic Muslim voices are not? They're not readily available or
mm,
accessible to the public. These are questions that I ask quite often, and it's not an overnight fix. But I
mm,
think when there's authors such as yourself writing these books, these are the
mm,
examples that can be used to fill that gap. It's a
mm,
gap, and you all are providing what is needed to fill it. And we're working on making sure that they are included to actually serve its purpose and fill that gap to allow Muslims to see themselves authentically and for people who are not Muslim to see Muslims accurately.
In terms of the work that you are doing, honestly. And I think it goes back to even that point about, you know, institutions having those books that are anti-Islam. I would then question, where does that neutral stance then fit in? You know,
Exactly.
why is it that you only need to be neutral when it is about something that is Muslim, but not having to stay neutral when it's something that is anti-Islam?
Hmm. And as a librarian, as a Muslim hijabi librarian, I don't try to make it like every librarian is anti-Islam. That is not true.
Mm,
In fact, I know many librarians who are not Muslim, who have Muslim patrons or live in communities where there's many Muslims, and even some where there's not a lot of known Muslims. Because
mhm,
every Muslim lady does not wear a hijab. How do you know she's Muslim?
mm,
Most of the men, how do you know they're Muslim? Because they have a beard? Well, there's a lot of men walking around with
mhm.
beards. And I didn't know that's not a qualifying factor because every man can't even grow a beard. So he's not
Yeah.
Muslim because he can't grow a
Yeah.
beard. So, so I'm just saying there's not always an outward representation
Mm,
of people's faith. And oftentimes it's because of the stereotypes and they're concerned for their own
mm,
safety and well-being. I mean, that's the truth. Um, people make decisions however they feel best for their life. But again, that's what should be included in the literature. These different
mhm,
decisions, different examples of how Muslims live their lives. And I'm saying that to say that it's not only Muslim librarians. The Islamic Library Association, we recently completed a series on allyship.
mhm,
And there are librarians who are not Muslim who understand the need to have Muslims accurately represented in libraries. And I just interviewed some, but that just goes to show that it's not really a librarians are against Islam or Muslims. It's the policies. It's the
mhm.
policy that even if they want to have Muslim representation, the policies block the acquisitions within those collection developments before a book can even get on the shelf. So, what are your thoughts on the roles of the allies and
Mm.
the librarians that are not Muslim, the stakeholders who help with advancing Muslim representation?
Mhm. I think good allyship is consistent, it's quiet, and it's informed. It means amplifying Muslim voices rather than speaking for them. It also
Mhm.
means doing the learning independently, being able to accept feedback without becoming defensive, and then also understanding that impact matters more than intention. So allies don't need to be perfect. They just need to be present and accountable.
You made so many good points this whole entire evening.
Oh, thanks, Lisa.
You brought up what allyship means to you and what they'd have to do.
Mm,
But how has your faith specifically shaped your understanding on leadership, service, responsibility, community? How has Islam shaped you?
mm. Um, I think it has grounded my leadership in responsibility rather than in ego. Um, it reminds me that leadership is actually its service. It's that power. That power is a trust, and that success is not only measured by outcomes but by integrity. Faith gives me clarity when I'm faced with complexity, and it gives me resilience during periods of rejection. It also anchors my responsibility to uplift others, not just advance myself. and hence why I decided to launch my book, hoping that, the intention was that it can assist and that it can help others.
So what changes give you hope when it comes to Muslim representation in books, media, leadership? What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is ownership. I think,
Oh,
more Muslims telling their own stories,
mm.
building their own platforms, and redefining leadership on their own terms. Being able to see Muslim women stepping into visible roles without waiting for permission, and institutions slowly realizing that representation strengthens rather than threatens credibility.
I only have one more question for you tonight. If you could
Sure.
leave one message for our viewers, especially those who are advocating for representation and knowledge in institutions, specifically libraries, what would it be?
Mm. Um, I think representation goes deeper than, checklists and quotas. It's about who gets to be seen, who is being remembered and trusted as a source of knowledge. And when libraries and knowledge institutions make space for a wider range of stories, they don't just reflect the world around them, they are also helping to build the world that we want to live in.
Inshallah. That's a
Inshallah,
wonderful
Ameen.
message. I mean, I can't say it enough. This has been wonderful. I appreciate your time, your input, your contribution to authorship, to leadership, to hijabi ladies, unapologetically. That's the thing. It's not that you're doing it unapologetically. And that is beautiful, mashallah. I love it. Where can people find your book?
So firstly, I just want to say, Khalisah, I've thoroughly enjoyed this time, and I actually can't believe that we got to the last question because I was really, really enjoying it. And also just, for the work that you are doing. And I'm so grateful that, you reached out and made this possible. And, may you be blessed in all the work that you are doing because you are making a difference and you are really helping the community. And so really, really appreciative of that. In terms of my book, it can be found on my website, and that is www.impactfulchange.co.nz. And some exciting news is that I'm just at the tail end of actually getting an online version available as well. So if people enjoy reading online and find it easier, that will be possible within the next week or two, inshallah.
Mashallah. Mashallah. I'd love to always be able to help. Keep us updated with your ongoing accomplishments because I know they're coming, inshallah. And
Inshallah, I mean.
I look forward to speaking with you soon, inshallah. Do you have anything else you would like to add?
No, I've
I will do
really
that.
enjoyed this. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Join the Islamic Library Association, and together we can shape a more inclusive future for literature.